If you want to make the strongest possible build for your character, in this video I will explain the entire gear system, what is the best gear piece for every slot, and what each stat means. You've probably seen a lot of videos claiming, this is the best weapon in the game, or this armor completely changed my life. All of that was clickbait and straight up nonsense. There is no such thing as a single best in slot item in this game, okay? I am going to show you how to avoid getting clickbaited and how to actually find the best gear pieces regardless of your progress in the main story. There are a multitude of items with identical stats in this game, so you have multiple choices for every gear slot to get the best possible stats. If you don't want to hear all the explanations and you just want to see exactly how to get the best pieces of gear for each slot, feel free to skip to the end of the video. First off, let's talk about gear. There are a total of 21 gear slots in your loadout. Some of these are just for utility items such as the face mask, lantern, arrows, glasses, dagger, axiom bracelet and backpack. The actual gear that makes up your build is the following. 2 slots for your main hand, which can be either 2 weapons or 1 weapon and 1 shield. 1 slot for your offhand, which can be any 2-handed weapon. The helmet, the armor, gloves, boots and the cloak as your armor pieces. 2 slots for the earrings. 2 slots for rings. 1 slot for necklace. 1 slot for the ranged weapon. There are several key differences between each gear slot as follows. The first major difference is in the number of Abyss gear slots they can have. Abyss gear are the skills and stats orbs you can insert into gear pieces to gain various bonus effects. The helmet can have up to 1 slot, the armor can have up to 3 slots, the gloves and boots can have up to 2 slots, the shield can have up to 2 slots, any main hand weapon can have up to 3 slots, any offhand weapon can have up to 5 slots, and the ranged weapon can have up to 5 slots. The cloak is the only gear piece that cannot have any Abyss gear slots, along with all the accessories. Another major difference is in what type of Abyss gear you can insert into each type of gear. If you inspect any Abyss gear, you will see a list of gear slots it can be inserted into. For example, the Swift Abyss gear, which gives you attack speed, can only be inserted into weapons, gloves and boots. Active skills such as Ground Surge can usually only be inserted into weapons. The armor and the shield can usually only slot utility and defensive Abyss gear, while the other pieces can slot utility and offensive Abyss gear. Another important distinction is in the base stats that the gear piece can have, which depends mostly on the gear slot. For example, armor pieces can only roll with defense, movement speed and elemental resistances. Gloves and boots can roll with defense and attack, plus movement speed, critical rate, attack speed and resistances. Weapons only roll with attack plus attack speed or critical rate. And lastly, probably the most important thing, is that the attack and critical rate stats on your melee weapons, boots and gloves are not shared between them. Suppose you have gloves with critical rate level 3, it will not apply to your melee weapons or vice versa. The same thing applies for Abyss gear, so don't insert attack or critical rate Abyss gear into your gloves and boots unless you plan to use hand-to-hand combat. It is important to note that the base and refinement stats on each gear piece in the game are always fixed, so you will never find 2 identical gear pieces with different stats. Keep in mind that all of the rules above do not apply to Cuckoo Pot items. Those items do not have Abyss gear slots and they have very specific stats and specific use cases. Those are niche items, they are absolutely not the best items in the game, so don't fall for clickbait. When it comes to weapons, there are some key differences between them according to the slot and the weapon class. In your offhand, you can equip either 1 weapon and 1 shield or 2 weapons, and these weapons can both have 3 Abyss gear slots. This adds up to a total of 6 slots, which is a lot, but remember that the attack and crit rate are calculated separately for both weapons, even if you use them at the same time. You can see this by equipping 2 swords in your main hand and then checking the attack and critical rate stats, which are displayed separately for both. For the offhand weapon slot, these have 5 Abyss gear slots, and some weapon classes such as spears can have up to critical rate level 4 to compensate for their slower attack speed. The shield is also a unique slot because you can put damage reduction and defense on it, and even if you don't have it in your hand, the defense attribute is still counted in your stats sheet. Another important detail is that almost all gear pieces can be refined, with a few exceptions. Refinement is equivalent to upgrading. There are a total of 10 refinement levels, and some gear pieces can be looted with refinement level 1, 2, 3 or more, depending on where you find them. All gear pieces that can be refined will gain an increase in their base stats, so for example if you refine an item which has attack and critical rate, the more you refine it the higher those values will get. The critical rate, attack speed or movement speed stats usually only increase when the item reaches refinement level 10, so it's a long journey. That's why you should generally look to get items which have a very high stat as their base as early in the game as possible. You can refine gear at any blacksmith and it costs various materials, which you can check from your inventory by pressing details on any item and then pressing the refinement information button. The higher the refinement level, the higher the cost, and at higher levels you also need abyss artifacts to upgrade your items. I already did an abyss gear explanation video which you can find on my channel, but the only thing you need to know is that these are the most important aspects of your build. This is what defines your build and your playstyle. Abyss gear are of two types, skills and stats. The skills gears will give you active skills, usually copied straight from the boss you obtained them from. The stats gears will give you passive stats, such as attack, defense, critical rate, attack speed and so on, including utility stats as well, such as damage against boss enemies or spirit drain. You can find these throughout the world by exploring, opening chests and most importantly, defeating boss enemies. The best abyss gear usually drops from main story boss fights, so don't get too distracted by side quests if you want the best possible skills. You can also craft certain abyss gears once you have the recipes for them. You can unlock more recipes by completing the Witch's questline. Now let's talk about the stats which you can see below your gear slots. As a disclaimer before we start, please note that some gear pieces are bugged in the stat sheet below your gear slots. For example, the necklace will count its stats 2 times, and the same applies to the cuckoo armor, which will appear doubled in the stats sheet. This is just a visual bug. Health is pretty self-explanatory. This is the most important defensive stat as it determines how much damage you can tank before you have to heal or worry about dying. The only way to increase your health is by upgrading your health node in the skill tree. You can see the current bonus health you get from the skill and how much increase you will get for the next upgrade. Focus on upgrading this as much as you can to increase your survivability substantially. Next we have stamina, which is the only limiting factor during combat. If you run out of stamina you have to stop and recover, so it's important to have this as high as possible so you can spam your attacks and your blocking and dodging more often. The only way to increase your stamina is by upgrading your stamina node in the skill tree. You can see the current bonus stamina you get from the skill and how much increase you will get for the next upgrade. Focus on upgrading this as much as you can to increase your DPS potential and also your defensive capabilities. Next we have Spirit, which is equivalent to mana from other games. This is another limiting factor for your DPS because some skills cost Spirit to use, such as your Turning Slash and Force Palm. The only way to increase your Spirit is by upgrading your Spirit node in the skill tree. You can see the current bonus Spirit you get from the skill and how much increase you will get for the next upgrade. Basically, the more spirit and spirit regen you have, the more you can spam your best skills, so this is very important, maybe even more important than stamina in some cases. Next we have attack, and this one is also pretty straightforward. This is a straight up linear increase in your damage, and you can only obtain this from gloves, boots, weapons and accessories. You can also get additional attack by inserting the Destruction Abyss gear into various gear pieces. The more attack you get the better, but it's not worth sacrificing critical rate or attack speed for it. One thing to note here about attack is that it only applies when you use that specific weapon to deal damage. For example, you can see that my attack is at 11 right now because I don't have any weapon pulled out. This attack comes from my necklace and my 2 rings, which add up to 6, and you have base attack of 5, so it adds up to 11. If I pull out my Righteous Verdict, you can see it in the stat sheet and my attack is now 41, which doesn't make sense because the weapon has 24 and with the previous 11 it should be 35. This is because of a visual bug that makes all of your attack or critical rate stats from your accessories appear doubled in the stats sheet only when you have a weapon drawn out. So in my case the stat sheet is showing 4 attack from my necklace and 8 from my 2 rings, which is a total of 12 instead of the actual 6. The same thing happens if you go into unarmed combat, which uses your arms and legs to deal damage. Now you will see that in the stat sheet I have 37 attack with my gloves, meaning my punches, and 36 with my boots, meaning my kicks. Again, if you look at my gloves and boots, they have 20 attack and 19 attack, so the values should be 31 and 30, but my accessories are displaying an extra 6, adding up to the 37 and 36 values. The same thing applies to Abyss gear. Let's suppose you insert Abyss gear with attack into your gloves and boots. This will not apply to your melee weapons, only to your hand-to-hand combat, meaning your fists and kicks. You can also notice that when you pull out any weapon, the attack and critical rate stats change to reflect the weapon you pulled out. This means that these two stats only apply from Abyss gear that you insert into that specific weapon, not on your other gear pieces. Another important thing to know about the attack stat is that you can obtain another +5 attack on any of your weapons by going to a grindstone to reinforce your weapons. This will last you for exactly 100 hits, and you can check the remaining amount on the weapon where it says reinforcement. Next we have defense, which is your other defensive stat besides health. This one is also pretty straightforward. It represents how much damage you negate from the enemy. According to YouTuber Evil Do Us Harm, who did the math on the damage and defense formulas, 100 defense points gives you about 50% damage reduction, and you get diminishing returns the more defense you get. Don't stress too much about stacking defense, because the best defense in this game is actually food. If you farm enough food, you can become pretty much unkillable as long as you have enough health. Simply upgrading all of your gear pieces to maximum level is enough to put you at a good defensive stat. Don't worry about min-maxing. Next we have critical rate, which is the most important offensive stat. This is basically the chance of dealing double damage. It starts at a base of 5% and each extra level adds up another 2.5%, according to YouTuber Evil Do Us Harm, who did the math on all of these stats. This means that if you cap your critical rate at level 15, you can reach 42.5% critical rate, which is pretty crazy. Now, we don't know for sure if that's the actual cap or if you can go above it, since it might just be a visual thing. Just like with attack, the critical rate value you see here is actually not accurate. The necklace appears 2 times, so you get +2 levels instead of +1, and the armor also appears 2 times, so you get +4 levels instead of +2. You can see that with my righteous verdict, it shows critical rate level 4, but I actually only have level 3, 1 from the necklace and 2 from the weapon. If I equip any boots with critical rate Abyss gear, it won't show up in the stat sheet because they don't apply to my melee weapon. Overall, you want to get as much critical rate as possible, but do not sacrifice active skills and powerful effects just to get critical rate. Just make sure your weapon of choice has the highest possible critical rate for that weapon class, and get a necklace which can reach critical rate level 4 at max level, and upgrade it as early as possible. You should be able to reach critical rate level 10 or 13 without sacrificing your best active skills by only embedding 1 or 2 critical rate Abyss gears on your weapon, and relying on your necklace for the rest. You can also equip the Cuckoo Flame Resistance Armor for 3 extra critical rate, which applies to all of your weapons. Moving on to attack speed, which is yet another important stat for DPS. You also want to aim for level 15 with this to attack faster and ensure you land your combos on the enemy and stagger them easier. As opposed to attack and critical rate, attack speed is shared between all of your weapons, so you can insert attack speed gears into any gear piece and it will count. You can get this to level 15 easily by getting 2 rings with attack speed level 3 or 4 and then filling up the rest of the levels with the Swift Abyss gear on your gloves and boots. You can get at least 12 levels from your gloves and boots, and then it's easy to reach max level, but don't sacrifice powerful Abyss gear. Movement speed is not that important unless you plan on exploring a ton, and if you want to do that as quickly as possible. You can easily get to level 8 by having 2 earrings with movement speed level 4, and that should be enough. And lastly, we have the elemental resistances. These are different from all the other stats because they have 3 different thresholds that you have to reach to gain certain effects. You can view these thresholds and the effects by pressing the status button to view more details about your entire loadout. Here we can see that for each element we have thresholds at level 5, level 10 and level 15. At level 5 you get immunity to the specific weather condition for that element, and this only applies to fire and ice. This is good in order to avoid the stamina reduction and damage you take when you are in hot or cold weather. At level 10 you get elemental resistance, which means you take less damage when you suffer from that status effect, such as when a boss attacks you with that element. At level 15 you get elemental immunity, which means you can no longer be burned, frozen or shocked. As you can see, these stats are very niche, since they only help you when you're fighting against enemies of that specific element, usually boss fights. If you're going to explore Peilun or the Crimson Desert areas, you should definitely have at least level 5 on ice or fire resistance, just to avoid the penalty on stamina and avoid taking damage over time. Now, how exactly do you get the best possible gear for each slot? There are many resources on the internet where you can find all the items in the game, such as GameMate or crimsondesert.gg. My preferred option is crimsondesert.gg. Here you can find all the items in the game, you can even filter by specific subcategories, you can filter by rarity, and so on. You can see the base stats of all items here, and if you click on them, you can see if they have abyss gear slots and how to obtain them. So let's assume you're looking for the best possible two-handed weapons, right? You go in here, click on weapons, then you expand the type filter and find the weapon type you need, and also expand the filter for character and select your main character, in my case Cliff. Let's suppose you prefer longswords because of their fast attacks, just select longsword from the list. In order to find the best ones, simply look for the highest possible critical rate level, which in the case of longswords it's level 3, and then ensure it has 5 abyss gear slots and 39 attack. The higher the level of the critical rate stat, the lower the attack it will have in order to compensate. You can see that for longswords there are a ton of options for the best possible stats, which are 39 attack and critical rate level 3. If my math is correct, there are 8 longswords that have the maximum possible stats on them, all with 5 abyss gear slots. You know what that means? It means that there is no such thing as the best longsword in the game. There are 8 identical ones, so just go in there and choose the one you like the most visually, or the one that is the easiest to upgrade or the easiest to obtain, and that will be the best possible weapon for you. For example, I am using Righteous Verdict in my build because it has top tier stats and it was easy to find. Repeat the same process for any other weapon class. The same thing applies if you're searching for the best possible armor. For armor, you're looking for 41 defense and that's it. Pretty simple. For example, the plate armor of the Shadows is probably the best looking one, so I would use that. If you want to get specific resistance at the max level for a certain boss fight, then you should get all 3 Cuckoo armors, sure, but you need to progress through the game a lot to get them. Even though these have stats such as critical rate and attack speed, it doesn't necessarily make them the best. Why? Because they have no abyss gear slots, so you're losing out on utility and defensive effects such as damage reduction or increased food effectiveness. If you care only about the highest possible DPS, then the Cuckoo flame resistant armor will be the best choice. Suppose you're looking for the best cloaks, then you're looking for high defense and high resistance level, ideally one of each resistances at least level 5 to trigger the temperature immunity. We have the Frost Cursed Plate Cloak with Ice Resistance level 5, the Plate Cloak of the Shadows with Fire Resistance level 7, and for Lightning Resistance all of them are capped at 3, so pick whichever you want. For boots, if you don't plan on using hand-to-hand combat a lot, just go for the best looking ones and make sure they have high attack and defense plus 2 abyss gear slots. Again, ignore the Cuckoo items because they don't have abyss gear slots, so they're not great. I would pick something like the Plate Shadow boots or whichever boots you like best. If you also want to mix in hand-to-hand combat in your playstyle, then definitely look for any boots with critical rate level 3, such as the Scorch Flame leather boots. For gloves, there's actually one single best option, and that is the Tariv cloth gloves, simply because they are the only gloves with attack speed, and remember that attack speed applies to all of your weapons, not just the gloves. And lastly, for the helmet, we are looking for something with 21 defense and a special effect, such as Daze Immunity. One of the best options here is definitely the Plate Helm of the Shadows, which also comes with the Glacial Domain skill, which is pretty neat. Whichever items you pick from the available best options, just make sure they have abyss gear slots on them, because those provide you with the best effects. There's also the Cuckoo Marni Laser Helm, which has a pretty cool active ability, but in my opinion it's pretty niche and you lose one abyss gear slot, so it's not always worth it. It's good for one-shotting trash enemies, but that's about it. The same thing applies to accessories as well, and it's even easier because there are very few of these. The best earrings are Ancient Earring, Black Lion Earring, Faded Earring, and Witch's Earring. Why? Because they have movement speed level 4 on them. The best necklaces are Blizzard Crystal Necklace, Engraved Silver Necklace, Grey Mane Necklace, Hellfreen Necklace, Necklace of Lightning, Surreal Necklace, and White Lion Necklace. Why? Because they have critical rate level 4 on them. The best rings are Witch's Ring and Mark of Darkness, easy as that. Why? Because they're the only ones with attack speed level 4. And now you know, whenever you see a YouTube video saying this is the best weapon in the game, or some other nonsense like that, it's complete clickbait. Use the available resources that I showed you and put together the best possible build with the fashion that you like the most. I will leave a link in the comments and the description with both websites that I mentioned earlier, so check them out. In my next video I will explain the whole cuckoo pot gear crafting system, cause that's a whole other thing that will take some time. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.